October 14th, 1944. RAF Ridgewell, England. The air in the Nissen hut is thick with the smell of damp wool, stale cigarette smoke, and nervous sweat. Outside, a persistent English drizzle slicks the asphalt, turning the pre-dawn darkness into a blurry watercolor of gray and black. Inside, under the bare, buzzing light bulbs, the faces of the men from the 381st Bomb Group are pale, their youth betrayed by the tired lines around their eyes. This is the hour of reckoning, the briefing that will decide who lives and who dies today. At the front of the room, a map of northern France is pinned to a board, a spiderweb of red yarn marking the established high-altitude approach corridors. But today, there's a new line, a single angry red gash drawn with a grease pencil. It doesn't soar at 25,000 feet. It snakes through the landscape, following the winding path of the Meuse River Valley, deep in territory bristling with German anti-aircraft batteries. Colonel Abernathy, a man whose face seems permanently carved from granite, taps the line with a wooden pointer. The targets are a series of 7 rail and road bridges in this valley. Intelligence confirms they are the primary artery for reinforcing the Aachen front. Standard high-level bombing has failed. The valley is too narrow, the target's too small. We've lost 6 bombers in 3 weeks trying. A murmur ripples through the room. They all knew this. They'd seen the empty bunks. Then, Abernathy gestures to a young captain standing beside him, a man with a steady gaze that seems out of place amidst the exhausted anxiety of the others. Captain Jack Callahan has proposed an alternate solution, an unconventional one. Captain Callahan steps forward. He's the pilot of the B-17G they call unfinished business. He clears his throat, the sound unnaturally loud in the sudden quiet. Gentlemen, the only way to guarantee a kill on these bridges is to go in low, treetop level, 1 pass, 1 plane. The silence that follows is heavier than any engine roar. It's a silence of pure, unadulterated disbelief. A pilot in the back of the room lets out a short, sharp laugh of contempt. Someone else mutters, "He's lost his mind." To take a Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress, a 4-engine behemoth designed to be a high-altitude battleship, down into the weeds was more than unconventional. It was blasphemy against the entire doctrine of strategic bombing. It was inviting the enemy to use your 10-man crew for target practice. Callahan ignores the whispers. He eye-scans his own crew, seated together in the 3rd row. He sees his co-pilot, Frank Miles, clenching and unclenching his jaw. He sees his bombardier, Ray Santoro, staring at the map as if trying to burn a hole through it. At 200 feet, Callahan continues, his voice unwavering. We fly under their primary detection radar. The 88mm guns in the flak towers won't be able to depress their barrels low enough, fast enough to track us. It'll be rifle fire and 20mm cannons, but we'll be moving at over 200 miles an hour. We'll be on top of them before they can zero in. Colonel Abernathy cuts in, his tone sharp. He believes he can thread that valley, drop a stick of bombs on each of the 7 designated bridges, and make it out the other side. The contempt in the room becomes audible. In a fortress? She's a slug down there, Cal, a fellow pilot calls out. She can't maneuver. She'll be stable, Callahan retorts. A perfect bombing platform. Ray can practically drop the bombs by hand at that altitude. The briefing descends into a tense, one-sided argument. The colonel lets it play out, watching Callahan. He is testing him, letting the wolves of common sense and bitter experience have their say. They talk about the plane's vulnerabilities, the massive wingspan that could clip a church steeple, the slow response time that would make dodging ground fire impossible. They remind him that a single lucky hit from a 20mm cannon could turn the bomb bay into a secondary sun. Later on the hard stand, the verdict of the ground crew is just as brutal. As Callahan and his men do their pre-flight checks on unfinished business, Master Sergeant Evans, the crew chief, runs a hand over a freshly patched section of the aluminum skin. "I heard about your plan, Captain," he says, not looking Callahan in the eye. "The boys in maintenance, they're calling it the flying coffin plan." He finally turns, his face grim. "That plane won't make it back. You're flying a coffin. It ain't right taking these kids with you." The words hang in the damp air. Callahan sees the doubt flicker in the eyes of his waist gunners, Sergeant Shaw and Corey. He sees his young ball turret gunner, Jimmy O'Malley, swallow hard. The entire base, from the colonel's office to the grease-stained mechanics on the line, have judged them. They are ghosts already. Callahan claps a hand on the cold fuselage of his bomber. "She'll hold together," he says, to the crew chief, to his men, to himself. "We have a job to do. Let's go do it." He pulls himself up through the forward hatch, the metallic scrape of his boots echoing the finality of his decision. The engines haven't even started, but the 10 men of unfinished business are utterly and completely alone.
The 4 Wright Cyclone engines bite into the air, their synchronized roar a defiant shout against the gray morning. Unfinished business lumbers down the runway, heavy with a full load of fuel and a specialized payload of 21 500-pound bombs, 3 for each bridge. As Captain Callahan lifts the B-17 into the air, the familiar fields of East Anglia fall away, replaced by a blanket of low, brooding clouds. For the first 2 hours, the flight is routine, almost unnervingly so. They join a larger formation heading for a diversionary target near Cologne, a ghost in a machine of hundreds, climbing steadily into the thin, freezing air of the stratosphere. Inside the aircraft, it's a world of vibration and cold. Lieutenant Abe Goldstein, the navigator, sits at his small table, charts illuminated by a low-wattage lamp, his face a mask of concentration. The low-level part of the mission has made his job exponentially harder. There are no clear landmarks from 25,000 feet, only a map of the world below. But soon, he will need to guide them by sight, using treetops and river bends as his waypoints. The pressure is immense. One wrong turn, and they fly directly into a known flat concentration, or get hopelessly lost in a maze of identical French valleys. Up in the cockpit, Callahan and his co-pilot, Frank Miles, fly in practiced silence. The autopilot holds them steady in the formation. Radio check? Callahan's voice crackles over the intercom. One by one, the crew reports in. From the tail, Sergeant Hank Devereaux. From the waist, Shaw and Corey. From the ball turret beneath the fuselage, Jimmy O'Malley's boyish voice confirms he's scanning the sky below. From the top turret, the flight engineer, Gus Pachaski, gives a thumbs up visible from the cockpit. They are a single organism, 10 men breathing the same canned oxygen, their lives connected by insulated wires. Then, at 10:17 a.m. over the Belgian coast, the moment arrives. Callahan's voice cuts through the intercom, calm and clear. "All right, boys, this is our stop. Radio, signal the lead. We're peeling off." Staff Sergeant Leo Vance, the radio operator, taps out the coded message. As the rest of the 381st continues its stately procession toward Germany, Callahan banks unfinished business to the south. The bomber shudders as it leaves the slipstream of the formation. Suddenly, the sky is vast and empty. The comforting presence of 50 other fortresses is gone. You are on your own now. "Taking her down," Callahan announces. He pushes the yoke forward. The nose of the B-17 dips, and the descent begins. It is not a gentle glide. It is a controlled fall. 25,000 feet. The engines whine as their pitch changes. 20,000 feet. The air outside grows warmer, the frost on the canopy beginning to melt. 15,000 feet. Abe Goldstein abandons his high-altitude charts and presses his face to the plexiglass, trying to marry the features of the landscape below with the detailed topographical map on his lap. 10,000 feet. The world rushes up to meet them. Patches of forest, checkered fields, the slate-gray roofs of a small village. For the gunners who have spent hundreds of hours staring at a distant, abstract horizon, the effect is dizzying. The ground is no longer a map. It's a real place, filled with real people and real threats. 5,000 feet. Picking up the river, Goldstein calls out, his voice tight with tension. A silver ribbon of water appears, snaking through the landscape. This is their guide. This is their road into hell. "Hold on to your seats," Callahan warns. He pushes the yoke further. The B-17 drops like a stone. 1,000 feet. 500 feet. The details on the ground become sharp, terrifyingly clear. A farmer on a tractor looks up, his face a white blot of astonishment. A flock of birds scatters in panic. The roar of the engines now echoes back from the ground, a sound the crew have never heard before in combat. Then they are there, 200 feet. The altimeter needle quivers just above the red line. Callahan pulls back, leveling the bomber out. The sensation is sickening. The massive aircraft feels like it's clawing at the air, struggling to stay aloft. The treetops of the Ardennes forest are now level with the waist guns. To the men inside, it feels less like flying and more like driving a 10-ton truck at 250 miles an hour down a country lane. Every dip in the terrain requires a delicate adjustment from Callahan and Miles. A moment of inattention, a sudden downdraft, and a wingtip could catch a hillside, cartwheeling them into oblivion. "Valley entrance 2 miles ahead," Goldstein reports, his voice strained. "First flak tower should be on the ridge to starboard." As if on cue, Hank Devereaux from the tail gunner position calls it out. "Got a structure, starboard high. Looks like a watchtower." "That's it," Callahan confirms. "Get ready. Once we're in the valley, there's no turning back, weapons free." Across the bomber, 10 pairs of hands tighten on their triggers and controls. The low hum of the intercom is filled with the sound of heavy breathing. They fly on, the green of the forest a blur on either side. The mouth of the valley looms, a dark cleft in the rolling hills. As they cross the invisible threshold, a pinprick of light flashes from the top of the distant tower, then another, and another. The opening shots of the overture. Red tracer rounds, looking deceptively slow at first, begin to arc toward them, a lazy, beautiful, and utterly lethal greeting. The world explodes in noise and motion. The lazy red tracers become a torrent of incandescent fury. The sound is not the distant, muffled crump of high-altitude flak. It's a visceral, intimate violence. You can hear the sharp crack of the 20mm cannons firing, a sound that is immediately followed by the percussive bang of the shells detonating near the fuselage. Shrapnel, like a storm of angry hornets, rakes across the aluminum skin with a deafening metallic scream. "They're on us! 3 o'clock! 9 o'clock!" Sergeant Shaw yells from the right waist gun, wrestling his heavy .5 caliber machine gun to bear on a gun emplacement nestled in the trees. The B-17 is a magnet, drawing fire from both sides of the narrowing valley. Callahan is no longer just a pilot, he's a brawler, using the rudder and yoke to skid the massive plane left and right, throwing off the German gunner's aim. The bomber shudders and groans in protest, its frame not designed for this kind of aggressive, low-level maneuvering. In the glass nose, Bombardier Ray Santoro ignores the chaos. He is hunched over his Norden bomb sight, his world shrunk to a set of crosshairs and the approaching ribbon of steel and concrete that is bridge number 1. "Steady, Cal, steady," he pleads over the intercom. "Just a few more seconds. Give me a straight line." "I'm giving you what I can, Ray," Callahan grunts back, fighting a sudden crosswind that threatens to push them into the valley wall. A string of cannon shells walks its way up the right wing, punching a line of neat, round holes in the metal. The plane lurches violently, and for a heart-stopping second, the wing dips precariously toward the churning river below. Co-pilot Frank Miles slams the throttles for engines 3 and 4 to full, helping to level them out. "Now, Ray, now!" "Bombs away!" Santoro shouts, toggling the release for the first 3 500-pounders. The plane jumps, suddenly lighter. From his vantage point in the tail, Hank Devereaux sees the bombs fall in a perfect tight string. They seem to hang in the air for an eternity before disappearing beneath the belly of the plane. Then a colossal geyser of water, mud, and twisted metal erupts where the bridge used to be. "First target is dust! Confirmed kill!" he yells, his voice a mixture of triumph and terror. There is no time for celebration. Bridge number 2, a railway trestle, is already rushing towards them. Again, the deadly ballet begins. Callahan jinks and weaves to avoid the worst of the fire, then straightens out for the final 30-second run. Santoro, sweat stinging his eyes, makes his calculations. Gus Petrusky, from his top turret vantage point, sprays the ridges with suppressive fire, his twin .5 calibers hammering a deafening rhythm just above the pilots' heads. He sees German soldiers on the ground, their faces upturned, firing rifles and machine guns at the sky-filling monster above them. "Bombs away on 2, Santoro calls. Another shudder, another explosion behind them. Devereaux confirms the kill. 2 down, 5 to go. But unfinished business is starting to pay the price. The intercom crackles. Right waist to pilot. Corey's hit. Shrapnel in his shoulder. It's not bad, but he's bleeding. "Shaw, do what you can for him," Callahan orders, his mind racing. They were absorbing damage at an alarming rate. Warning lights on the instrument panel begin to flicker like malevolent Christmas lights. The hydraulic pressure for the main landing gear is fluctuating. Number 3 engine is coughing, trailing a thin gray smoke. Gus Petrusky starts rattling off a litany of damage reports, his voice calm but urgent. They fly on, deeper into the gauntlet. Bridge 3 is obliterated. Bridge 4 vanishes in a cloud of pulverized concrete. With each successful drop, the crew's confidence builds into a kind of manic adrenaline, a feeling of invincibility in the heart of certain death. They are actually doing it. The impossible plan is working. But the Germans are adapting. They know the plan's path now. The fire becomes more concentrated, more accurate. As they approach bridge number 5, the most heavily fortified of the lot, nestled at a sharp bend in the river, a mobile flak wagon opens up from a previously hidden position on the riverbank. A shell bursts directly under the nose of the aircraft. The plane bucks like a wild horse. The plexiglass nose cone crazes, a spiderweb of cracks obscuring Santoro's view. "I'm hit," shouts Abe Goldstein, the navigator, his voice choked with pain. His station is a wreck of shattered charts and twisted metal. In the cockpit, the entire instrument panel shudders, and several gauges die. "Ray, status!" Callahan yells. Santoro's voice comes back, panicked. "The sight is gone. The explosion must have wrecked the gyroscope. I've lost control of the crosshairs. I can't make the drop, Gal. The system's dead." Ahead of them, less than a mile away, bridge number 5 rushes to meet them, its defenses spewing a solid wall of fire. They are flying directly into the kill zone with a broken bomb sight. The mission and their lives now hang on a single impossible decision.
"I'm going manual," Santoro's voice cuts through the intercom, raw with determination. "Like the old days, no sight, just me. Cal, you have to fly this thing like it's on rails, no weaving. Fly it straight and level or we miss." The request is a death sentence. To fly straight and level through this maelstrom of flak would be to offer the German gunners the perfect non-maneuvering target they'd been praying for. Every instinct in Callahan's body screamed to jink, to dive, to do anything but hold steady. He glances at his co-pilot, Frank Miles, who simply gives a grim, determined nod. There is no other choice. "You heard the man," Callahan says, his voice tight, his knuckles white on the yoke. "Hold on, everybody. This is going to be rough." He eases the bomber onto a perfect, unwavering line, aimed directly at the heart of the bridge. Immediately, the German gunners seize their advantage. The rhythmic banging of shrapnel against the fuselage becomes a continuous, deafening roar, like being inside a steel drum during a hailstorm. An 88mm shell from a distant battery, firing on a flat, desperate trajectory, screams past the cockpit window, close enough for the pilots to feel the heat of its passage. Inside the shattered nose cone, Ray Santoro is in his own private world of focus. The wind whistles through the cracks in the plexiglass. He has wiped the blood from a cut on his forehead out of his eyes and is now on his belly, peering through a small auxiliary window in the floor, the emergency manual sight. It's nothing more than a simple grid on a piece of glass. He has to judge the speed, the altitude, the windage, all with his gut and his eye. He is trying to solve a complex physics problem in his head while the world tries to kill him. "Steady, steady," he murmurs into his microphone, talking more to himself than to the pilot. The bridge grows in his small window, from a toy into a latticework of steel. He can see the individual railroad ties. He can see the frantic figures of German soldiers running for cover. A shell explodes just off the left wing, and the entire plane is thrown sideways. Sergeant Jimmy O'Malley, the ball turret gunner, screams as his turret is peppered with shrapnel, jamming his rotation mechanism and cracking his armored glass. He's trapped in a tiny, vulnerable sphere, able to do nothing but watch the river rush by beneath him. "Hold her, Cal," Santoro yells. Callahan and Miles fight the controls, wrestling the wounded bomber back on course. The bridge is now filling Santoro's entire field of view. Almost. Almost. Now. He slaps the manual release lever. 3 more bombs fall away. For a terrifying 2 seconds, nothing happens. Then, the entire center span of bridge number 5 disintegrates in a flash of white-hot light and black smoke. "Target destroyed," Devereaux confirms from the tail, his voice hoarse with disbelief. They have done the impossible, but the price is brutal. The intercom crackles again. It's Gus Petrovsky, pilot, engineer. "We have a major fuel leak in the line for number 2. I'm trying to crossfeed, but we're losing it fast. And number 3 is on fire." A fire, the most feared word on any bomber. I see it now, a greasy black smoke trailing from the 3rd engine. I immediately hit the firewall shutoff and the fire extinguisher for that engine. The propeller slows, windmilling uselessly. They are now flying on 3 engines, one of which is leaking the lifeblood they need to get home. They still have 2 bridges to go. The 6th bridge is smaller, a wooden road bridge, and they dispatch it quickly. Santoro's newfound confidence making him deadly accurate, even with the primitive manual sight. But the valley is tightening, and the final target, a modern concrete span, is situated at the valley's exit, directly adjacent to a small auxiliary Luftwaffe strip. As they line up for their final run, the worst possible scenario unfolds. On the ground below, hangar doors are rolling open. Small, agile shapes are taxiing onto the grass runway. Messerschmitt BF-109s. "Bandits! Bandits at 10 o'clock on the ground! They're scrambling!" yells Shaw from the waist. There is no time to turn, no time to run. They are committed. "Ray, make this one quick," Callahan orders. He eases the 3 remaining throttles to the firewall, trying to squeeze every last ounce of speed from the dying fortress. They roar over the airfield as Santoro releases the last of their bombs. The final bridge crumbles just as the first pair of German fighters lifted off the runway behind them. They are out of the valley. All 7 bridges are gone. But unfinished business is a flying wreck, trailing smoke and leaking fuel. And now, a swarm of fresh, fast-moving fighters is rising from below, climbing with terrifying speed to meet them, eager to finish the job.
The relief of clearing the valley lasts less than a second. It is replaced by the high-pitched snarl of German cannons as the first Messerschmitts tear past them in a blur of gray and black. The B-17 shudders as 20mm cannon shells find their mark, ripping through the thin skin of the tail section. Sergeant Hank Devereaux screams a curse as his twin 50 calibers roar to life, spitting a stream of tracers at the climbing fighter. "He's coming around! Get ready!" The sky, which had been their sanctuary, is now the arena for a deeply unfair fight. A heavy, wounded bomber on 3 engines against a pack of nimble, frontline fighters. Callahan throws the plane into a shallow dive, trading precious altitude for speed, desperately trying to make for the cloud cover miles ahead. The fighters are on them like wolves. "They're coming in high from the left," Mike Corey yells from the waist gun, his voice strained as he helps the wounded Bill Shaw hold their guns steady. The air fills with the chaotic symphony of battle, the deep thud of their own heavy machine guns, the sharp crackle of the enemy cannons, and the terrifying zing of bullets passing through the open waist windows. Gus Petrosky swings his top turret around, tracking a 109 as it makes a strafing run. His guns hammer, and he sees smoke pour from the German fighter's engine before it peels away, trailing black fumes. 1 down. But there are more. Another fighter swoops in, targeting the crippled No. 3 engine, hoping to reignite the fire. Rounds slam into the wing. Inside the radio room, Staff Sergeant Leo Vance feels a searing pain in his leg as a stray bullet tears through the fuselage wall. He slumps over his set, his hand still clutching the microphone. The battle is a swirling, disorienting nightmare that seems to last an eternity. You are a cornered beast, lashing out in every direction. The gunners are performing flawlessly, their training taking over, creating a protective cone of fire around the bomber. They damage another fighter, forcing it to break off. But they can't hold them off forever. They are low on ammunition, and the plane is getting weaker by the second. "Pilot, navigator," Abe Goldstein's weak voice comes over the intercom. He has a makeshift bandage on his head. "Cloud base is 2 miles ahead. If we can make it there, we might lose them." It's their only chance. Callahan flies directly toward the promise of gray obscurity. The fighters remaining seem to sense their desperation and press the attack. A final, determined 109 lines up directly behind them, out of the firing arc of the waist and top turrets. It's up to DeVero in the tail. He waits, letting the fighter get closer, closer, until it fills his entire gun sight. He squeezes the trigger, sending a long, sustained burst directly into the Messerschmitt's nose. The fighter seems to stop in midair, then its propeller shatters, and it cartwheels into the forest below. At that moment, unfinished Isness plunges into the damp, gray embrace of the clouds. The world outside vanishes. The frantic chase is over. Silence descends on the intercom, broken only by the ragged sound of coughing and pained groans. They are alive, but they are not safe. Gus Petrowski gives the damage report, and it is catastrophic. They are down to 2.5 good engines. The hydraulic lines are shot, meaning no brakes, and likely no landing gear. The radio is damaged, and Vance is unconscious. Fuel is critical. Goldstein, despite his own injury, calculates a desperate, straight-line course for the English coast. The long flight home is a testament to the sheer will of the crew. Petrosky works frantically, rerouting fuel lines and nursing the failing engines. Shaw and Corey tend to Vance, stopping the bleeding in his leg. An hour later, through a break in the clouds, they see it. A thin, white line on the horizon. The cliffs of Dover. A wave of profound relief washes over the exhausted crew. They have made it back. But their ordeal is not over. With no radio and a battered airframe, landing is their final challenge. As they approach RAF Ridgewell, they fire off a red flare, the signal for wounded aboard. The ground crew, who had long since written them off as lost, stare in stunned silence as the tattered, smoke-stained ghost of unfinished business appears in the sky, one wheel stubbornly refusing to deploy. Callahan knows what he has to do. He orders the crew to brace for a crash landing. He circles the field once, lining up on the grass beside the main runway. He cuts the power to the engines, and the bomber glides in, an eerie silence replacing the familiar roar. There is a terrible, screeching sound of metal on earth as the belly of the fortress digs into the mud. The plane slews sideways, a wingtip digs in, and it spins to a violent, shuddering halt just feet from a line of parked fuel trucks. For a full minute, there is only silence. The fire crews and ambulances race toward the wreck, expecting the worst. They see a plane riddled with hundreds of bullet holes, an engine blackened by fire, a wing bent, the nose cone shattered. It is a flying coffin that somehow made it home. Then, the forward hatch is pushed open, a figure emerges, then another. One by one they climb out. Some are wounded walking, others are carried, but they are all alive. Captain Jack Callahan is the last one out. He stands on the torn-up earth, looking back at the ruin of his aircraft, then at the 9 men of his crew, safe on English soil.
The ground crew and pilots who had mocked his plan that morning simply stare, their faces a mixture of awe and utter disbelief. He had taken them down into the valley of death, leveled 7 bridges, and against all odds, brought every single one of them home,